Thank you for coming. I see that we get more and more people. It's getting exciting. We have really an exciting panel. So it's a mix. Some people, curators that work for foundations, museums, and then we have collectors who have their own institutions or not, or they are on the way of opening spaces. It's a mix of collectors from the Baltic countries, and also we have Lisa, maybe you heard her talk before, Lisa Long, she worked for the Julia Stoschek collection, and Alain Servais, Belgian collector, financer. Here we have Martin Krus from the collection in Estonia, the Krus collection, Martin App collection. Jevgēnija from the ZUZEUM museum in Latvia. And there we have Vita Liberte from the Vivi Foundation, and she also has a residency. And on top of that, she's also the honorary consul of Uruguay in Latvia. So if you need to go to Uruguay, she's the person to talk to. Maybe I think it's interesting, they were asking me, so what are we going to talk about? What are the questions? I think that I wanted to mix professionals from the Baltic countries with some others which are not, from like Alain and Lisa. So it's a mix because we can talk about public-private, we can talk about regional, global, etc. So, but maybe the best thing is to start a little bit, each of you, I give you the mic and you can tell a little bit what your interest is, if you have a foundation, what you do with your foundation, motivations, whatever, and then we can tap in and ask some questions, okay? Alain, if you want to start. There's one mic for everyone.
I just asked Paco whether I had to make an introductory statement. He said no, I'm on the first one. So in 2 hours, I'm going to be speaking about why I'm collecting contemporary art. So I will not go into why I'm collecting contemporary art now. I will only go into why I am sharing contemporary art. Because we're talking about spaces, exhibition, but it's only about sharing. And when I'm collecting for 30 years, and when you are having more and more works at home, you realize that you have one responsibility, which is sharing them. So you find different ways. It started very naturally. I just opened the house to visitors, visitors from abroad once in a while. And then I realized it was an evolution, and it was kind of an experience from there. I realized when I was visiting other people's home that what I didn't like is to find the same works at the same place. So, because I found that suddenly the works were dead, they were fossilized, they were part of the furniture. So I decided, okay, I'm going to change. But then it's very striking because you want to change some works, but you say, wow, but I love this piece so much. So you say, why am I going to change it? Then you go further and you say, yeah, but if I keep buying works, well, it's unfair for the new one because the old ones they're going to take the place. So you're changing. Then I did my first exhibition like 25 years ago, and I realized I didn't like to do the exhibition. It's something, I mean, I'm a good researcher, I'm a good selector, but I'm not good at putting the works together. So I decided to take an outside curator, also to judge myself, because, you know, the problem with collectors is we are the queens and the kings of these worlds, meaning that nobody dares to say to us anything. We are the best. And I can tell you that many, many collectors are not the best. They're even the worst. So I wanted also to confront myself. So I hired a professional curator and asked him, can you do something with this collection? And so I kept this, and every year I'm rehanging the collection, but outside, always with an outside curator to kind of keep myself, my 2 feet on the ground, and if someone wants to say, you know, I'm sorry, I cannot do anything with your collection, so I know I've got to stop. So that's basically it, but it's just starting with the responsibility of sharing art with any of you, which means that you are all invited if ever you pass by Brussels.
Thank you, Alain.
Question is, sorry.
No. What is your motivation, or tell us a little bit about your collection?
Okay, fine. So in a way, yeah, let's start from the sharing the collection. That's a good point, because this is maybe I'm definitely not that far in terms of being collector, and it is a little bit the problem to me as well, the definition of being the collector, or even to be some kind of an institution as a collector. And I would say very bluntly that I'm not the collector in that sense, but I do love art, that's for sure, and I do own art, and I love to go, art fairs, to the galleries, to the museums, read the art books, etc., etc. But the being collector, that's a problematic little bit, because then you start to become some kind of an institution, and then you think that, wow, that maybe I'm not this person, because even by the background, I don't have any art background even. I'm the engineer. And it all started also just very randomly, very kind of emotionally in a way, and didn't lead many years to any, level of professionals or whatsoever. But somehow still I can't get rid of this item either. And the space at the moment, actually the space is quite important topic, because I'm more and more thinking about how to present the art, not that much which new piece I would like to have. Actually I haven't seen this kind of a ideal example to myself, that how this kind of a relatively small collection should be presented. But I'm working on it, I'm thinking with it, and to say that actually I have a little bit art also in a public space, which is in our office. It's not a dedicated, obviously, room, but still, it is possible to access there and look the art. So yeah, it's a controversial.
But the idea of sharing is also important to you, because somehow you try to show your collection, tour it, not, right?
Yeah, absolutely, because it's here as well. So
yeah. So, Jevgēnija.
Yes. Hi, my name is Jevgēnija. In this conversation, I'm not a collector myself at all. I am just an art historian and curator who works in a private collection of ZUZEUM's collection. Towards how we are working with the public, we do have our institution. For now on, we're also a museum. So congratulations to us. And in our collection, we have more than 33,000 of items. So of course, we cannot survive only with the owner of the collection. We also need curators who's working applied arts, paintings, and contemporary art as well. And for now on, we're gonna have also opening of the new exhibition during the next week, and we're constantly growing. We're constantly working with another institution in Baltics and worldwide as well, and making also public talks, workshops, and trying to work and help everyone to know much more about art. So we are very publicly open.
I saw from the program that's a mix of exhibitions. You're going to do one about Bauhaus, and also a presentation of works from the collection. And also you said it's a very big collection, like 33,000 objects, and not only video, sculpture, visual arts, but also applied objects. I saw a lot, so it's interesting. And you were telling a minute ago that it's no longer only private, but also become mixed private, public, right?
Yes, before that it was a private institution, and we used to be art center with a private collection. But from now on, it was much easier and much better for us to become a museum. to have accreditation by the government, which means that the part of the collection is also part of the government collection. It was better for us to open more doors, to be able to make applications for the international programs, and to be more open to the public as well at some point. To point on our art map that we're not just the private gallery institution where we have our own rules. We would like to be the part of the national heritage, and we would like to be more as an adult institution, as I must say so.
Thank you. Lisa, with the Stoschek collection both in Düsseldorf and Berlin, I mean, it's an example of making a collection accessible, public. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes, of course. So I'm a curator and a writer, and I'm invited here today to speak about the Julia Stoschek collection, which is now also the Julia Stoschek Foundation. And from the very beginning of the inception in 2002, when it was founded by Julia Stoschek, the idea was to make it public and accessible to a wider audience. Why? Because she was focusing on time-based media and time-based arts. Just to clarify what that means, it means video, moving image, sound, performance, and digital works such as AR, VR, live simulations, computer works, etc. So many of those actually are not visible unless they are switched on and there's a form of projection or there's a screen. So when they're switched off, they don't really exist in the space. So to show these works, it was clear to her that she would have to create dedicated exhibition spaces, and started with a space in Düsseldorf, a building that she bought and renovated, and it houses 2 floors with over 2,000 square meters of exhibition space, an art depot, and a media storage that is best practice standard. And also in 2016, the foundation, or it was still then a collection called, opened in Berlin with another 2,500 square meters of exhibition space. And I worked there for 7 years doing programming and thinking about, as a curator, the public presentation and the engagement with the audience through the collection, but also through temporary exhibitions by artists that were not in the collection. And another thing that we started doing, which was on the map for quite a while, but then really got precipitated by the pandemic, was that the catalog is completely online. So you can go online and see all of the works that are in the collection. It is continually updated as works are acquired. And there's also a growing video or a mediatheque or a video data bank with works from the collection. And there are currently 300 works available for you to view without registration on our website, and that is also continually growing over time. So yeah.
Thank you. Vita.
Yes, I represent VV Foundation. We are based in Riga, Latvia, and we basically support all kinds of creative processes. During the 8 years that we have been around, we have supported everything starting from the cinema to experimental music, opera, performances. We are also supporting publishing of philosophical magazine. So we do all kinds of things related to creative processes. And of course, we also support visual art. So our collection is really, if you've seen it, at the project zone is more about supporting all kinds of creative processes. It doesn't matter what kind of media it represents, as long as we are willing to support the process itself. And that's why we also have artist residency in Latvia. It's based in Pāvilosta, on the west coast of Latvia, by the beach, in a very deserted area. And it's also all about supporting artists and their creative processes. They come from all over the world, also from Lithuania.
You opened the residency in 2021. It's I peeped on your online. It's very nice. As I understand properly, you started supporting artists from Latvia, the Baltics, but you're also inviting foreign artists and curators to the residency, right?
Yes, totally. It's open for everyone from all over the world. We have people from all continents. And since this year, we're working with Krus. He's a Dutch curator. He just started as a director of EMMA in Finland, and he's helping us with the invitations of artists. We did the open calls before, So anybody could apply. Starting next year, we'll do the invitations only residency.
More selective. Alain, Monsieur, we talked about accessibility, and yesterday I explained a little bit that today's collectors share a series of topics. I want to talk about place, about your space, the loft. Can you tell us a little bit about it, and what's the relevance for you of the space?
That space was my home. So as I said earlier, I started opening the place, and that's maybe a solution as well. Is even in the office, I see many offices. I know a notary.
How big is the space? Sorry.
900 square meters.
Okay.
On 3 floors. But it's I remember there's a notary in Milan, and he's opening his office every weekend to show the collection, which I find an interesting thing. So it's my home, and I moved home like 10 years ago, and at the moment I was about to leave the place, I looked at, because my bathroom is there, my bed is there, my kitchen is there, so I said, it doesn't make any sense to have a space where I'm exhibiting art at the moment where there is a housing problem everywhere in the world, in Brussels as well. So I thought, okay, is it possible to bring artists in? So I went from being an exhibition space only to a residency as well. What I want to underline is, for me as a private, and that's maybe the difference between private collectors and public collectors, it's all about experiences. It started when one ball rolling and then another ball rolling. And that's the way it works, because everything was about experiences. Because getting in contact with the artist was something that changed very much as well, because in this world, normally collectors don't meet artists so often, because there's a kind of a wall which are the galleries very often, because are not always so comfortable to have artists speaking to collectors. So it showed me the problem. It showed me also the difficulty of handling artists. So it was an experience, but everything was an experience. And just to go to the end of my life, because many people then ask me, what are you going to do with the collection? I said, I don't care. I'm going to be dead, so I really don't care. And what the collection brought me is all those experiences. You see, I'm here in Vilnius. I've never been to Vilnius before, and I'm here because I'm involved in art. So it's all those experiences that changed my life, that made it much richer. And in some way, the objects from this collection are kind of souvenirs of those experiences, and that's the most important thing. So, but it's a very particular, because at the end the collection is pretty solid and pretty interesting. So I'm hoping someone will be able to do something with it, but I haven't thought about it because I'm still busy building it. It reminds me. One of my mentors, because I always recommend any of you to find mentors, because it's making your life much easier as well, because you are taking the experience of other people. I was speaking to Harald Falkenberg, that very famous German collector, and he was one of the first to show his collection at the Maison Rouge in Paris, which, it was, people don't believe it, but it was not common at the time to show private collections. And I was coming to Harald, and I said, Harald, what does it do to see your collection shown in public like this, with public coming in and seeing it? And he looked at me, he said, if anybody knows around, they know it. He said, I don't care. You think I have time to think about this? I'm busy living. And that's the most important thing I think that we do. So what I would like to ask, I'm sorry to take your job, to the professional curators we have here and the professional art historian. Certainly some of them, I think, Lisa, you work for public institutions as well. How is it to work with private collectors? What do you think are the differences between working with public institutions and working with private collectors? And the same for you with Mrs. ZUZEUM. I think it's an interesting question.
I think so, but I'm not sure if I want to answer. No, it's a good question. Lisa, go ahead. Start shooting.
I mean, the answer is quite big. I think something that's positive about working for a private collection and a private foundation is a specific type of dynamics. So you have a direct relationship with someone, you have a very close relationship, and you can get things done quickly, which obviously in public institutions sometimes takes years. Acquisitions can take forever. Decision making goes through many levels of hierarchical boards and teams, and so that's very different. And that's something that's great, I think. It's also working with someone who has a specific interest in art. And in a public institution, perhaps it's a little bit more varied, or there's different types of criteria, or different people bring in different types of criteria. So working for a private individual, they have interests and themes. And I mean, the Julia Stoschek Foundation was very good in its sense of locating itself historically, building it historically, building lineages out of specific works that were already collected early on, focusing on whether we want to call them masterpieces or not, but focusing on major works by artists, not buying only individual works, but buying groups of strong works together, and trying to follow artists longer through their career, so showing a span of the artistic practice. But yeah, it's a lot more personal, I think, as well. And I think that subjectivity is a power. I think a lot of, the conversations around museums or the idea of national museums, I do believe they're very important. I think the longevity of a public museum is extremely powerful, more and more so, perhaps. I wish that museums would stop trying to be more dynamic, and that is their luxury, to be slow. We do not have that luxury in this world so often that we are allowed to be slow, and public museums have that luxury. But the subjectivity of working for a private individual means that we can understand the story behind it, and I think that's also very special. And to understand that art is always made from a subject, chosen and made with a subjectivity behind it, with a personal connection behind it. And it's not neutral, and it's not universal. So those are some of the differences, I think.
Virginia.
Thanks. I do agree with Liz as well, and I think there are 2 points, like from my perspective, and differences when you're working with a public or the private institution. First of all, is the collection itself, and the second one is the way how you work in general. With a collection, I think when it's a private collection, you're not only collecting history, you're also collecting memories and emotions. In our case, in ZUZEUM's collection, of course, part of the collection was built, and we purchased that since we knew that it's going to be very powerful, it's very meaningful, and also, as Lisa said, also the point to have several works, have the collection or memorial collection or particular artists. For example, even here in ARTVILNIUS, it's possible to see the works by Zanta Logina, and we do have memorial collection of her. She's a very strong artist, and memorial collection is much stronger than one or several pieces. With a museum and a public institution, it's much different. You cannot buy something only because you like it. Someone's supposed to approve that it's historically meaningful. And then we go to the second part of how you're working. When you're working with a private institution, also as Lisa said, you have much more freedom, and some of the decisions are built just because we would like to. And we can experiment more. And I think it's also the main part of the art world and the arts institution in general, is just to experiment and trying to find out a new solution and to be brave enough to try something new instead of going on a basic space, basic system, basic type of works, catalogs, texts, stores. Let's speak more about when the artist was born, how he studied, when he died, and why he did particular things. We're not usually talking about specific work, specific period, and maybe we're sometimes just avoiding things that sometimes artists do something because they just would like to do. Maybe there is not such a big story. Maybe it's not so historically meaningful nowadays, but who knows? A lot of artworks were made and not many people supported them, and afterwards, these are the ones that we know and that we can call as a masterpiece.
Yeah, I think that I worked also with a private collector in Lanzarote for 8 years. So I think that what you said about agility and passion. But at certain point, when you collect a lot of works, you have a lot of works, then space becomes a problem because we didn't have that space. And then actually, we ended cooperating. But I just mentioned this because I want to ask Martin a question about, I know that you don't have a space, but how would your ideal space look like? What kind of space, how would you like to show your collection anytime soon?
There are definitely many possibilities or many ways how to present or how to put it, how to place your art. Obviously, the most natural one is that you have it at your home, which is also okay. Then, as we also have, is at the office. But obviously, those options, they have their pros and cons. Pro is obviously that you will kind of lower the barrier for the access to the art, even at your home. Still, there are some people coming to your home. It's your family, it's your friends, etc., etc., and they instantly will be surrounded by art. Not even to, they don't have to think about that. They have to, make a special effort to go somewhere, etc. They very easily they can be a part of art, and even sometimes some discussions are starting around this. Why this picture, and etc., etc. The same thing is in an office. That the people, your colleagues in the office, they also walking around in office, and they think that the first thought is that why the art is here at all. But anyways, it's already something starting quite easily in a way. But the negative part obviously is that there is a lot of distraction around the art, and it kind of devalues in a way the status or the art. And this brings me to the two directions actually. One is to take completely step back, to take all the art away from the walls and just keep it somewhere. Nobody is seeing it. So it's only in your head. You think about it, not directly, you don't see it directly, but in your vision, so to say. You think about your collection in your head. But then, of course, the other way, going professional way, is to establish a dedicated space for it. And what type of space it could be? At the moment, I'm thinking that the main goal is that to minimize all the distraction. So the art itself should be, take everything around it. So that's the goal.
Vita, so what's your take on space? Do you think it's important as a collector to have a space, or you're happy with touring works from your exhibition? What's your take on that?
Well, space is a responsibility, right? I know that ZUZEUM has a big space, but it's a lot of responsibilities around it. So we're not thinking about creating a special space for our art, but we are displaying it as much as possible. I'm displaying it in my office that luckily has 2 floors. So there's a lot of space, and like Martin said, I think it's very interesting also for my staff and people to see it. We invite artists to talk about their pieces. We also change, like Alain said, the art is constantly being changed around office. And we're also displaying our collection in the house that we live, And we also keep it open. As long as somebody wants to come and visit and see it, it's always open for people. And the same thing is for residency. It also has art collection there. So whenever artists come and work there and curators are invited, they see the art that's there, and we're also changing it constantly. That's how we think. That's how we can do it so far.
We saw from Jevgēnija that the mix of private and public. What I would like to ask you, how do you see the relation with the public sector? You cooperate in any sense with the public sector, or how do you see the relation public and private?
I think that's one of the most important subjects right now in 2025. We are in a changing world. One of the most important discussion currently in the art world is what is the role of museums? It used to be that the museum were academic and let's say colonizer. They were dominating. You were going to a museum to learn, and now you're going to a museum to gather, to speak, to discuss. So it is a strong evolution of what museums are becoming. There's another evolution is that for stupid reasons, most of public authorities around the world decided that culture was the responsibility of the wealthy because it's an elite activity. So football is fine, any kind of sport is fine, but culture should be financed by the wealthy people. And we have a kind of a privatization of the cultural sector, which is very strong everywhere. So the problem is that by accident, in many ways, the private collectors become very important because we spoke about acquisitions, but the problem is most museums have very small acquisition budgets. I will not give numbers, but my acquisition budget per year is as big as the Pompidou Center in Paris right now. So it is completely insane from that point of view. So in the responsibilities that we have as well is the private collectors are buying more and more art. It's a huge responsibility in terms of storage, but also of maintenance. It's easy to buy a work of art, but you need to make sure that it's preserved for the next generation. You're aware because you've got a collection of 33,000 works. I've visited your storage. It's a massive problem, but it's a massive investment. So when as a private collector, you're acquiring the works, it's only one little part of the thing, because then you need to still store it. So I took the decision that relationship between public and private is really essential, because it's also a change. It used to be 20 years ago that the public museum was dominating. I was knocking on the door saying, I'm a little private collector, you want to listen to me? And they were looking at me and said, no, you're not interested. I remember 20 years ago, Nicolas Bourriaud, the famous curator, he was asked, what about public and private? Why don't you get more private collectors involved in the museum? Because he was at the Palais de Tokyo at the time. And he said to the audience, really calmly, in a very French way, he said, when I'm going to the dentist, I'm not asking my grandmother. Just saying, there's nothing interesting in private collectors, when it's totally wrong, because every single major museum in the world started from a private collection, whether it's the MoMA, whether it's even the Louvre. It's not a private collector, but it's the king.
The Prado.
The Prado is the king as well. So it's always starting from a private collection. So we need to rebalance that connection between public and private, and it's not easy, because very often, as Lisa was saying, we take it slow. We take it slow, and we take it like we know, you don't know. So, and also the agendas are very different because it's very academic. It's not always about sharing. There's a big debate. One of my favorite art person in the world is Glenn Lowry, the former director of the MoMA, and he said something very important. Public museum today should spend more money in programming than building the collection. I don't know if it makes any sense to any of you because it's pretty complex, But it means public museums should spend more money doing good exhibitions than spending money in acquiring works, because the private collectors have the works. Come and borrow them from me rather than acquire them. And it's even better because I take care of the preservation, which costs a lot of money. So you are better off. But there's still something inside the public museums that their obsession is building collections. A museum director is kind of left over after getting not paid well for 30 years, is that he will leave a trace by building a collection. So it is not an easy, I thought it would be an easy discussion, but it's not an easy discussion, because when I go to museum, because I decided not to build a private museum myself, not like the ZUZEUMs, because it's very expensive, very difficult to maintain. There's always the roof leaking somewhere, and there's always a problem. So I decided, okay, I'm going to lend my collection actively to public museum, but they have their routine. They're borrowing from themselves, from each other, and so on. So just in one word, it's a key problem. It's a key element where massive amount of work is necessary because the world has changed. And the public museums, as Lisa was saying, are changing so slowly that maybe the train will pass by the time they wake up.
Well, I think it has also a little bit to do with the reputation or consideration of the collector in general from the perspective of the institutional part, the museum, how are collectors, private collectors, esteemed, considered. About what you said, do you envision, any one of you, for example, I see that some institutions, some private collectors are also co-buying or co-producing artworks with public institutions and lending it. Is this an option?
I think Lisa would be much better placed than me for speaking about this, because I think you co-produced a lot of work with museums, with the Stoschek. I'm not doing it actively from that point of view. No, I'm more acquiring the works and lending them.
Oh yeah, it's loud. We did co-produce. It's something that I didn't do so much because co-production takes a lot of care and a lot of dialogue with the artist, and so as well. So it needs some time. But we did support other museums in co-productions, and because there's always usually a lead producer, nonetheless, in the group of co-producers, and ideally you have 3 co-producers of sorts, but maybe the others can speak to that as well if you co-produce with, not yet, well, an invitation, because I think museums are always looking for co-producers, but maybe it's a good question of should museums be the center of production? Or if there are other centers of production. And I would actually disagree with you about the role of the collection in the museum, because I do think, I wish museums would do less programming. I wish museums would bring in other outside entities, curators, new models, and focus much more on their collections, go deep into the collections, do that research, like really solidify it. An art historian and a curator are 2 very different types of people, and they think about art in very different types of ways. And I do see the big, like, public national museum as a place for art historians to really sit with the object. But yeah, that's just.
What strikes me, to answer your question, Lisa, is that 99% of the people, when they go to a place, for example, the wheels, it's a frustration to the wheels, which is kind of a Kunsthalle, which means they have no connections. But when you go to the wheels, people think they go to a museum. They don't care who owns the works. So that's a little bit the problem. What's important is that the museum has an audience. For me, that's the most important. Over many, many years, they build credibility so that they are a place where people are ready to come and learn. But who owns the works, in my opinion, is not very important to the public. So that's a question, but it's a very important philosophical question that is going underground in the art world right now.
I will ask one last question, and then we can open the discussion open to the public. You talked to Lisa about objects, so I want to believe that there is this shift in collecting, in the spirit of collecting, from object-based to idea-based. I mean, all of you, museums, private collectors, you buy artworks, you buy objects, but I see more and more this tendency to produce ideas, help, for example, with a residency, or help an artist with a publication that not necessarily ends up having or buying an object. How is this relationship between object and idea? That was something that I would like to hear from you.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I personally can say that perhaps I'm exactly there at the moment to think about that just buying more art perhaps is not the way forward. I fully agree, but I haven't done yet nothing so far. Actually, small step we did. We also have a place where we can offer residency, and actually we had first artist, but it's a very, in a initial phase. But I fully right, yeah. This is definitely thing I want to develop in the future. More idea-based, more this kind of a connection-based, social-based stuff around art, because definitely there is a lot of art available, and personally I don't see, see even the problem or who is owning art in that sense, that if it's somewhere publicly accessible. So who is the owner of the piece? It's not important. I fully agree with that one, that the museums having all this infrastructure, which is wonderful, and this is their big advantage, which they should use much more. And who is owning the piece is not important, and definitely should cooperate more with private sector, because a lot of stuff is happening in private sector. So, yeah.
Vita. Have you thought about it, the relationship between object and idea? Because in a way, with your residency, you're doing that, just that.
But also about collection, we are really more willing to support sometimes something that's disappearing, like performances. We are big supporters of Latvian Performance Festival, and we kind of enjoy it a little bit more because afterwards there's no responsibility for actually keeping the work and taking care of it. There's one moment that you enjoy and you let it go. So we're totally about supporting ideas, supporting the whole process of creation. That's the most important thing for us. The collection is, like Alan maybe said, like a souvenir, like a nice memory to keep from working with the artist, but it's totally not our objective to have the piece.
Jevgēnija, is the ZUZEUM Museum also involved in this kind of relationship?
I can say from behalf of the worker of ZUZEUM, I think that this is the reason why we exist in general as an institution, not only because of the collection and the fact that we need to support that and conserve that and research and all of that, but also because the owner of the collection, Jānis, he do really trust us, and he trusts to all of our ideas. I'm working in ZUZEUM for 5 years, and we used to have some exhibitions or projects or public program things where for example, I was not sure that it is necessary or it's a good idea. And when I was going to Jānis and I was asking him why he supports that, like, does he think it's a good idea? And he said that he's just trusting us, and for him it's just a huge pleasure to see that he can give opportunity to us. Even if this idea not going to be so good, we're going to have experience and we're going to have opportunity to do something better afterwards. So I think that, idea itself also ZUZEUM as a place. It was not built only because of amount of the works. Janis had an idea that we can have a museum. Also, the important thing in Riga and in Latvia in general, that we don't have the Museum of Contemporary Art yet. So we were able at least start that, at least do something for the public. So we are able, and my generation, so all of us, are able to see what was going on in the art world in the end of the 20th century, what's going on nowadays.
And to make the last point on your question, whether something changed in the collecting, because I'm involved for this for 30 years, I noticed a huge difference. I noticed, I spoke about museums, the evolution of museum, the evolution of private versus public. Another massive evolution is that when I started collecting 30 years ago, private collectors were private, which means that they were not sharing. You were kind of buying the works at the fair. You made sure nobody knew you bought it. And it was pretty secret from that point of view. Something that I really saw changing, and certainly in the last 10, 15 years, is now when you buy something, you post it. And in a way, what is very annoying sometimes, then you go to a dinner when you meet collectors, and you have the impression that the collector is a gallerist, because he's so in love with what he bought that he wants you to buy more, okay? When in the past, it was the contrary. People were saying, no, it's my artist, I don't want anybody to know about it. So it's really changing the mentality, is that today the collectors, very often, they became kind of the sponsor of the artist. You know, they can become a partner. And this is why it's becoming kind of an evolution to do residencies, because it's a natural evolution to say, oh, I really like the work, I want to support the artist, so I want to offer him a place to work, and so on. So it's a very strange evolution, which has good sides and bad sides as well, because it's really annoying in dinner when you're sitting by a collector and he's definitely trying to sell you the things. So, sorry? I'm not doing it. No, I'm sure. But it happens to me. Sometimes they're so happy with the acquisition that they say, you should buy it, there's 2 more, and it's 25,000. So, you know, it really happens. So, of course, it's not every day, but for me, it's a massive change in the relationship of private collectors, is that when you acquire work, you become like a partner to the artist, which definitely 30 years ago, I promise you, it was not the case. So it's a massive change of dynamic in many ways.
But even, as you said, Alain, 30 years ago, when you, especially in Europe, if you had this idea of showing your collection, it was looked, ill. I mean, it was, you had a bad reputation, so that was something totally private. Okay, there are 10 minutes left, so we'd like to open the discussion to the public. If anyone wants to enjoy the moment and ask, I'm sure, interesting questions to any one of the panel speakers, I'm happy to hand you my mic. Come on.
I also have a question, if I can ask, to the private collectors. There's always a moment that triggers you to go from maybe being interested in art to wanting to collect it, wanting to support artists directly, wanting to work with artists. What was that moment for you?
Like the very, very first
moment? How did you know?
Oh, you mean the first piece ever that I bought?
I mean, maybe that wasn't the key moment. Maybe the key moment was after that you realized you wanted to open a space for artists, and just the switch over, or the moment of commitment. I'm curious.
Okay, interesting. Switching from the art lover to art collector, I think maybe it happened because it took me some time to get into this world, because I'm a lawyer and I don't have any arts background. But I started going to the fairs and started going to the shows more and more. But I think what really changed was when I started going to the studios of artists. And that's when something happened. That's when I felt that I want to be part of this. And like I said, we are not buying to collect, we are buying to support. And if I can support somebody who has helped me to find or like widen my thinking or my heart even, I'm willing to be part of this. Be his partner, like Alan said. I really like to be partner of the artist. Sorry, but that's a new thing. I really enjoy it.
So you asked what was this moment when you started kind of a more focus to the collecting or something? Okay. Yeah. Perhaps the moment when you start to ask, or not start to ask those questions about art in your head, so to say, why artists are doing what they are doing. And this is not so much that you are concerned about the artist or, but it's rather helps you, or it's interesting to you to see, the world a little bit differently. And then it's perhaps also not so important anymore that the piece itself, but the process behind it. And this is perhaps when you start look it more deeply. Maybe this is the moment where you can call it that you now you are a collector. I don't know, or maybe the collecting is a quantitative issue that you should have a certain amount of works. Obviously, you should have more works perhaps than your walls at your home. I don't know. Maybe this is a border. I don't know. That's a good question, but yeah. Perhaps I don't have the right answer.
So we could paraphrase it differently. I mean, is there a certain amount of artworks?
It's not what I was asking.
No. But okay, but I'm paraphrasing or saying that, is there some, you consider yourself, you're a buyer, and then when you have a certain number of artworks, I don't know, maybe when your house is totally full, you consider yourself a collector. Is there a moment like that? Any idea on that?
So to answer Lisa's question, for me, the difference between my art life and my professional life is predictability. So in my professional life, which is in finance, it was that elite university, that elite school, that way of doing that thing, that everything was, it needed to be done by 2012, by 2013. In the art world, I really let it flow. It's really incredible. I could almost write a book now by the number of experiences that brought me to places I would not expect. I'm not talking about geographically. It's also by the experience of getting involved with artists. So it was never planned, it never started somewhere, it just happened. I don't know when, I don't know how, but it just happened contrary to other things. What I'm also very careful is about, also through my experience, is to deify the artist. I'm not deifying anyone, neither the collectors, because they're really serious assholes, and I was hoping that some of you would say, yeah, working with a private collector is very difficult because depending on his moods, we can work or we cannot work. So I'm sure it happens as well. So, but it's, nothing is perfect. And the same with artists, and I'm sure with residencies, it's the same story. So I opened the residency, I like to work with artists, but everybody agrees that most of them are pain in the ass, okay? They're highly demanding, they're highly self-centered, they just speak about themselves. So the thing is, it's the best things, and it's also something that you need to protect yourself against. Because sometimes, artists, they want more and they want more, and the more successful they are, because my residency is mostly up-and-coming artists. The only problem I had was with established artists. I remember, just one example to give you why I'm not lying, is that there was someone that was about to do a pavilion in Venice, So she was the only one to require, yeah, but I need a room with these things, and I need a Wi-Fi and this, I need this, I need this. I said, what? What the hell? I'm inviting you at my place and you're telling me that you want to change the coffee machine? I mean, you take the coffee machine that everybody has been using, okay? No, 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 no. She wanted something. So we did it the way she wanted. The day before she arrived, she sent one email, 2-line, sorry, over the other commitments, I cannot come. That's it, okay? So I said, oh my God. And I'm gonna stick with the emerging artists because then they are still something. So, because the established one, I mean, who the hell do you think you are? I mean, so, about the evolution towards, oh, it's so nice to be nice with artists. And another, before closing example, that is very annoying in the art world, because I'm giving you a little bit the dark side of the art world, is I see many of my collectors' friends, they say, oh, it's so nice, those artists. I mean, I had 7 of them in my Sicily house. So they went to Sicily to my house. And we were getting on so well. I mean, we were partying and drinking and cooking, and it was so cool. And oh, really, I love artists. And I say, man, they're not your friends, okay? I mean, you are different part. You're a millionaire, and they are struggling to pay their rents. But if you offer them free holidays with food included, they will be your friends, okay? But actually, they are not. So wake up. I mean, be realistic, because sometimes in the art world, that's why I prefer the finance world than the art world, is that in finance, we know we are competitors. And you know we can respect ourselves, but we are competitors. In the art world, everybody loves each other. I mean, we all hugging, we love each other, but then you turn your back and you've got 2 knives in your back and you don't realize it. So, you know, the art world is not heaven. So, and we should not take it as heaven.
But I think it's important to say, I mean, it is tricky, but it's not so bad. On behalf of the person, I am not a millionaire, I'm not an artist, I'm somewhere in between. And I think it's important to understand that all of us, we are just humans, and sometimes communication is a key. We had plenty of experience also where some established artists is coming, and we're scared out of hell. We are seeing what they acquire, what they want, and we already don't want to speak with them because we just think that something gonna get wrong. It's not possible. And then they're coming to our museum, to our gallery, and they're the nicest person ever. Not only because we probably gonna buy something from them. They're just nice because they're human, and we can also communicate with them. It's same with our owner of the collection. He's the funniest guy who I know, and of course sometimes it depends on his mood, but it's also, he's keeping and he's very professional. He's also open to the communication. Sometimes he just like, I just want this work here. There is no reason. But if it's not possible, or maybe if it's sometimes a bit difficult for us, or the work is too delicate to be in a specific place, we can recommend, we can speak with him, and then we can see in his eyes that he sees the reason why we are here. We're not just someone who's running around making coffees and working with his art. We're also his colleagues. So it's not so bad, but it's tricky. It is tricky.
But in defense of art,
Which is one thing. I think that's maybe a big difference between, I think every collector has their own approach, obviously, but as curators, we become curators to work with artists. So we build lasting, hopefully lasting, not always, but lasting relationships built upon trust that sometimes take a long time to build. And going through a tough period with an artist sometimes builds more trust if you get through it and you manage to deal with it. It's a lot like conflict management then. But that's my perspective as a curator, and I'm sure you feel similarly.
But I also want to say, in defense of artists, so if there are artists here, I think they just have this very strong interior life, you know, and they need to share that, and they have their mission, their vision, and that's it. So I understand that. And of course, if you curate a group show, you always have some artists that are HM, high maintenance. There are maybe 2 artists from 10 that you have to dedicate 90% of your time. but that's the way it is. Anyway, thank you for listening. I would like to close this with the idea of collecting as an experience, social experience. Please, a big applause for our panel members. Thank you. And there is one afterwards by Alain. He will talk about collecting, financing, art market, so you don't want to miss it. But thank you for being here. Vita, Lisa, Jevgēnija, Martin, Alain. Big applause for them, please.